hustlers, road players, tournament champions. Hear the stories, get their advice, learn about their lives. Our host, Joey Ryan, brings you an inside look at the professional pool player. You're listening to the Pool Player Podcast, brought to you by Pool Scene 365.
Hey, welcome to Pool Player Podcast. This is Joey Ryan. This is brought to you by 1pkt.com. I want to thank you guys for joining. I'm really excited for this interview today. I've been trying to track this guy down. I joke around and say that he's the busiest guy in pool, but we're going to have a great discussion today. So I'm going to bring in a former U.S. Open 9-ball champion, U.S. Open 1-pocket champion. He's in the 1-pocket Hall of Fame, and he's also the captain for the Team USA Mosconi Cup. So let me bring him in right now. Hey, Jeremy, how's it going? It's Jeremy Jones. What's up, buddy?
Hey, Joey, how you doing? Doing good?
Oh, man. Yeah, I'm doing great. And, you know, you and I, we kind of played tag a little bit trying to get this down, and I know you're so busy, so I do appreciate you making the time for this.
Well, yeah, no problem. We'll just blame the pandemic like everything else. So,
Okay, sounds good. Yeah. So, Jeremy, I really am excited to get to know a little more about you. So, if you would, could you tell us how you got started playing pool? Like, take us back to the beginning.
Well, it was kind of funny. My dad liked playing pool. My younger brother and I would have to go watch him play pool sometimes at the ice house down the road from our neighborhood. He had some friends he played with, and of course, they had a few beers and whatnot. So me and my younger brother actually learned to kind of hate it because we had to wait around, on my dad on, like I said, a Friday and Saturday night sometimes. And then a couple times when we were young, we had a pool table. Again, my brother and I didn't really like it too much. And he and I were number 5 and 6 out of 6 kids. So we were kind of the younger ones and palled around. But we had actually pull a homemade ping pong table over one of the tables and kind of get in trouble for doing that. But it was kind of ironic. Many years went by and I was 17 and I had 2 jobs at the time in high school. One of them was I was a pizza delivery man. And, on Friday and Saturday nights, we'd play a little poker with our tip money and whatnot amongst the guys. And one of the guys, Gilbert Luna, which we called Gibby, he was a pool player. So he'd always go to the pool room or the game room rather in Baytown. And so just one day he took me down there, and him and another coworker honestly kind of probably hustled me a little bit. So I had to work a few Friday nights on their tab for a month or so trying to pay off some debts. But I kind of got hooked to it. My family, we always kind of, in a sense, gambled a little bit or learned gambling games like, many card games and different things. And again, so I just kind of got hooked. I quit one of my jobs and went and got a job at the game room so I could play pool for free. And it kind of went from there.
Do you remember, was there like a point in time where you realized, hey, wait a minute, I think I could be pretty good at this game? Anything stand out?
Well, I was a good athlete prior to pool. Most of the sports that I played, I picked up pretty quickly. I could emulate people and understand why things happen, kind of. I was very lucky with a lot of good coaches. So, and same thing in pool. Being around the Houston area, there were a lot of great players. So you got to not only get to know them, but see them play a lot. So it didn't seem far-fetched to be able to improve. The one thing I didn't realize is that you could really do it for a living. That actually took me a year and a half or so before I realized that, these guys play full time. And so then I got really motivated, started going on the road and stuff. And when I started going on the road and really improving a lot, I thought I could do it for a while.
Yeah, so I have plenty of questions about being on the road, and hopefully you have some stories to share with us. But I'm kind of curious, like if there was a point in time where you realized you arrived, like I could beat anybody. Was there a tournament? Was there a moment in time where it's like you won a big event and you're like, hey, I could play with all these guys?
In a sense, in '94, I won in '93, I finished second in the national 8-ball event, the BCA, which was a huge event at the time for amateurs, or, you know, people on the cusp or whatever you want to call it. But and then 94, I won the Masters event, and then also won the Texas State Open. And I think at the time was the youngest player to do so, which was, you know, very motivating, especially with the list of players that had won that event. But also, I guess I kind of always put myself in a position to get knocked down, Joey, if this makes any sense. I kind of went on. Johnny Archer kind of taught me into playing professionally. I should be there doing that. And I went on in 96, and I think I want to say I won 0 matches in 7 tournaments, but I might have won 1. So, you know, I kind of like didn't sit there and say I've arrived at one level and then just stayed there, I guess. So I never really got that complacency. I actually got more motivated as I went. Probably 96 to 99 or 2000, 2001, I practiced more than I ever had because I realized what it took. So I guess you could label me a humble player. Maybe that's a good way to put it.
I love that you said you won 0 events or 0 matches in any events because, you know, I'm a father. I have 3 little kids, and I'm teaching them now that you have to accept failure. You have to learn to fail, right? You have to be willing to take a chance. And it sounds like you probably, during those 7 tournaments where you didn't win a match, you probably doubted yourself. You know, what was that like? How did that feel?
Well, unfortunately, it was kind of similar to the US Open a few weeks ago. I got kind of nervous that I'd never had before. That happened a few weeks ago at the US Open. I don't know if it's exactly the same, but many of the guys, of course, were pure champions and Hall of Famers that I lost to. But probably over half the guys I lost to that year were guys that I beat maybe in the back room or whatever, you know, action, whatever you want to call it, or maybe even smaller events where I was more comfortable. It was just the setting and being around all those peers and champions and you know, partly heroes that kind of really, it took me a while. I talk about it all the time. Some people, they hit the scene running, Josh Fillers and different ones, but most of us, it takes some seasoning.
Yeah, and so I know you spent a ton of time on the road. In fact, I had CJ Wiley on, and he started telling stories, and he was talking about some guy, Jeremiah Johnson, and all these stories. And then all these people start messaging me and said, I think he was talking about Jeremy Jones in that story. You know, was that an alias of yours, or is that a
No,
completely
that's
different
actually
person?
a player, an older player from California.
Oh,
He's
okay.
probably a good 15 or 20 years older than me. He was a guy that hung out at Hard Times a lot, and he was I'm not sure his level, but from what I heard, he was like a road guy, you know, so who knows
Yeah.
how great he played. But yeah, there was some confusion whenever I was on the road, you know, because people had heard that name and not heard my name. And so they were like trying to say, well, you're Jeremiah Johnson. No, so on and so forth. So no, I think those were a different guy.
Yeah, I'm really curious to hear about your time on the road and maybe how that kind of sculpted you and molded you into the player that you are. Any stories that you have about the road? Anything you can share with us?
Yeah, it was, I mean, a great experience all the time. I mean, we didn't always win, that's for sure. There were, you know, some good ride homes and some bad ride homes as far as quote unquote. There were some crazy things that happened, you know, still to this day, people come up to me mainly at the Derby because of that area. But one time I was in Morristown, Tennessee, and I was with a couple of buddies of mine, and it was around 97, 98, somewhere around there, because we were all in Baton Rouge. I don't know if you ever heard of those stories where everyone was in Baton Rouge for a couple of years gambling because the action was so heavy. But anyways, it lightened up. And a guy I'd ran into said, hey, if you're ever up my way, we'd love to gamble with you. So we went up to Morristown, Tennessee, and I started playing a player up there. Mark Owens is his name, local champion, really good player. And his stake horse is the one I kind of befriended at a tournament who said, come up and gamble. So anyways, we start playing, and I'm beating him, but it's close, and I'm beating him, and we're playing like 1,000 a set, races to 11, I think. And so his stake horse was Frank Seals, who was a legendary stake horse, and he brought up CJ Wiley's name. He actually staked CJ for some time. way back. But anyways, so he says, well, we need a spot, but we want to raise the bet. And so as we're playing, this is a small town, and if I remember right, the pool room is called Hawks Billiards. And so as we're playing each set, more people are coming in, and my buddy's taking bet after bet on the side. I mean, just a sheet of bets, really, anywhere from 50 to whatever the other bets were. So the bet got raised as we continued to play. And so anyways, they want a spot. So I give them the 8 or the call 8. We're going to race to 15. They want to bet 10,000 in the middle. And so we were a pretty good winner already, probably 12 or 13,000, because we've been playing all day and raising it. So we said, okay, so we put 10,000 in the middle. And we probably had another 10 on the side. So long story short, it's 9-9 and I wobble the 8, or it's 9-8, I'm sorry, and I wobble the 8. He makes it 9-9 and he breaks and runs for 5 racks to the heel. And so I look at my buddy and we only got about 6 or 8,000 left, you know. And so when you're on the road, you really can't lower the bet, because it's kind of a telltale sign that, you know, you ain't got much money left. So, or at least most it is.
Wait a minute. Hold on, Jeremy. Am I
Yeah.
about to find out that Jeremy Jones shot an air barrel?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, all this money was posted.
All right.
No, we only did that if we knew each other, Joe.
Oh.
So, no, anyway, that's a Houston thing. That's, back in the day in Houston, you know, if you beat a guy, the air barrel is probably coming at the end, but that was okay because, you know, we'd lose 15 or 20 games at a time. So it wasn't like we lose 2 and owe you 1. But
gotcha.
Yeah. So anyways, so it's 14-9 him, and he breaks, and it's like a little arena in this place. Everybody's off to the around back of the banister and everything. And anyways, so the 4-9 is wired to the corner, and Frank is the only one sitting near the table. He's in a little school chair right on that corner where the 9 is wired. And Frank is no dummy. He sees the 9's wired. So his man makes a great shot on the 1. He made the 2 on the break. He shoots the 3. And of course, me and my buddy are talking, what are we going to do? You know, well, we got to quit, right? So anyways, Mark was the type of guy to fire the 9 in on you. And so this is a true story. And like I said, people still come up to me today. And so he fires his 4-9. Well, it swirls around the pocket. It's an old drop pocket they replaced on the Brunswick Gold Crown. And this 9 ball flies out of the hole all the way almost to the spot. And so Frank starts to get up and get the money because he can see the ball's dead, and he didn't realize Frank was up in years. And I said, hey, Frank, man, the 9's on the table. And he said, oh, I'm sorry. So he sits back down. And from there, Mark never pocketed another ball in the set. I played him safe. He kicked, I run out, I broke him around a couple, I played him safe, I run out, I broke him around another one, I beat him 15-14. So anyways, people still come up to me, like I said, and they say, man, I was there when that 9 ball flew out the pocket on Mark Owens, you know. So it was, and the funny, ironic part about it is, you know, Frank comes up to me, he says, hey, Mark's pretty upset. He said, come back tomorrow and we'll play some more. I said, okay. So we come back the next day and we start off betting pretty good, 3,000 a set or something like that. But there's nobody in there because it's a Monday. It might have been a Sunday, but there's no one in there yet to take side bets. So I beat him a couple sets, and he says, hey, Mark wants to eat and he's going to play you some more. And I'm giving him the 8. And so Frank is sitting in that chair. So Mark eats a sandwich and then he starts practicing a little bit before we're going to start playing again. And he shoots the ball 100 miles an hour into that pocket again. And it jumps the table and hits Frank right in the eye. The state course, right? And Frank's got glasses on, right?
Oh, man.
Yeah, this is crazy. So blood starts going everywhere. So we all rush over to him. He's a tough guy. And he says, I'm all right. He says, but I better go to the doctor. So it was kind of ironic. We never played again after he had to leave. Even though, so the pocket kind of saved me one night for a big number. But, you know, maybe the next day it kind of saved them a little bit. Who knows? Yeah.
Well, my dad taught me to play pool when I was real little, Jeremy, like 5 years old. And he always used to say one thing. He used to say, I don't care who you are, you're hitting the balls too hard.
Yeah.
That guy needed to hear that.
Right. Well, it was kind of like, you know, You see it today, actually, on the pro level. I comment about it sometimes, and usually it's a pretty easy shot when the guys. But you'll see the guys shoot the 9 in with a little authority. Nothing wrong with that. It just so happened, it was a phony pocket, and the funny thing is, I was across the table and I could see the 9 swirling around. Because I'm watching and I'm hoping, praying, just anything might happen to give me a chance, and I didn't ever expect that, but you could see it swirl around the pocket. Sure enough, I mean, it jumped out a foot up off the table, almost to the spot. It was the craziest thing ever.
So that's an awesome story. I appreciate you sharing that. You mentioned about, seeing a lot of crazy out there. I think nowadays with the internet and with the fact that people have a line on people, it's those days are over. I'm wondering though, like, is there anything you saw out there that was just like wild or nuts or just something that you could comment on, something that you could share with us?
Well, big action. I think it led more towards bigger action years ago, maybe. Trying to think of something crazy. I saw Frank James beat up his car one time after losing a set. I don't know if you ever heard of Canadian Frank James. He was actually a former NHL hockey player, but a great snooker player as well. Big guy. Oh, man. He actually went overseas to play snooker. He was probably one of Canada's best ever. But, yeah, it's kind of like when you ask somebody something, it's hard to come with an answer, I guess. Give me a minute on that one, Joey, and I'll get back to you.
Yeah, we can circle back to that.
Okay.
No problem. Who was your favorite player to be on the road with?
Probably Gabe Owen. I probably spent more time with him than anyone. We mixed pretty well, thought alike a lot. I was lucky. I got to room with Johnny Archer for many years. He was a great mentor in a lot of ways. A lot of people don't know it, but I'm kind of an introvert, to be honest with you. So I don't really room with a ton of people that, Joey Gray was a lot of fun this last year, of course. He and I have known each other, good friends for a long time, but never really spent as much time as this last year, year and a half or whatever. A lot of guys. Some of them you wouldn't know, like.
Yeah. Does Joey Gray
guys.
work out? I'm just curious.
What's
No, I'm
that?
just kidding. I said, does Joey Gray work out? I'm just curious.
Yeah, right. He goes by Topwater, Gerald Jackson. He's passed away now, probably 10 years ago, maybe 8 years ago. He was a guy that everyone knew out on the road, that was a great guy for action and just a really fun guy to be around. Of course, getting to hang around with all the people in Houston, that was almost like being on the road itself. That's why there was so much action, because at one time I think there were about 80 pool rooms.
Wow.
In the Houston area. Yeah, 1960, I think at one time had 9 on that road alone. And there were so many great players that would come in town, and the local people, Duke and Jersey Red and, Gabby, and just a number of guys that had all the wisdom. So.
All right, one more question about the road, then we'll move on from there. So you commentate a lot of, money matchups now. If, let's say, you had to go back out on the road and you had to get the money, give me 2 or 3 names that you would pick to head out on the road with.
Okay. Like who could I put in my stable kind of thing?
Yeah, exactly. You guys got to make some money out there.
We got to make some money out there. Well, I mean, you like the guys that can cover all bases, right? So I think Federer's a really good one. Probably going to be a great one-pocket player if he ever puts in the time for it. But he seems to perform real well. There's, let's see.
Put you on the spot here. You're on the hot seat.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of some lower levels, guys that I like the way they play, but maybe not necessarily champions, but match up and don't mind playing anybody. Tommy Medina. I don't know if you know Tommy very well. He puts a lot of guys in action, plays a lot of guys. He's a lower level player, but ain't everybody going to play Federer Gorst, right? So
that's right.
Let's see who else. Josh Roberts, maybe. I like Josh. He gets in action a lot, does well. So
Yeah, that's good.
you gotta like guys that are going to play, right? So
Heck yeah.
yeah,
You
not
know,
just
have the
carry.
courage to get up. Yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
exactly.
Yeah.
You know, when I used to, when I was playing a lot, I would travel quite a bit and I'd go into a pool room and I'd have people that, "Hey, you look like you play pretty good. I'll stake you against this guy." And I didn't want to get up. I just didn't have it in me, where I felt like I wanted to lose somebody's $1,500. I was just in town for work or whatever, but they could tell that I played pretty good, but I wasn't that guy. You wouldn't want me in your stable. That's for sure.
Well, you
So,
gotta get your feet wet. You never know,
yeah,
So
maybe. Yeah,
yeah,
maybe.
yeah. I mean, it's a little nerve wracking. I mean, but it's almost like going from town to town, and you know, maybe a funny story is you go to Waffle House when you enter the town, and um, you get you some food, and then you ask for the yellow pages to look up the billiard section to start, going to the pay phone to call pool rooms and see if somebody answers the phone that has a clue what's going on. And then a funny thing is a time or two, the billiard section was ripped out of the yellow pages already. So, and that's truth also. So, the road back then was a lot of fun, and you could see why people got hooked to it, I guess.
Yeah. I'm curious, throughout your whole career, what was your most crushing defeat?
Uh, Probably, I mean, I'd have to say probably the US Open in '99 against Johnny in the final. Um, I took our first defeat in the Mosconi Cup pretty hard. That was in 2001, I believe, if I remember correctly. Um, just because I was raised around team sports, and I was lucky enough that we won our first two, and we played great, and we played well in the third. They just outplayed us. I think it was the one where Steve Davis made the winning point against Earl, if I remember correctly. So, yeah, but probably as an individual, the U.S. Open in '99. So, because you never know when you're going to get back there. Um,
Do you remember that match? Can you take us through that match?
yeah, I remember it real well. I think, anyways. I haven't watched it, but I remember that I really didn't make too many mistakes. A couple bad rolls, making balls and getting snookered to go down 7-1. Got a chance. Ran out, ran some racks, got it 7-7, going to 11 after trailing by 6, if I remember. And then Johnny, he double banked the ball in on me, cross side.
Oh.
Yeah, off the point. And he may have done it in the next game as well, going for a cross side and double. Kind of a two-way shot kind of thing, where he's kind of
Yeah.
trying to hold the cue ball somewhere and then end up winning 4 in a row. So it was a match of streaks of games won where, and to be honest with you, no one's cost me more money in professional pool than Johnny Archer. He beat me.
Really?
He beat me in the finals of about 5 pro events or so, something like 4 or 5 at least.
So you mentioned traveling with him and getting to know him, but would you say he was probably your arch nemesis?
Yeah, that year actually there were about 10 left. I beat Rudolfo Luat and played about a perfect match in the hot seat match. Beat him like 11-3 or 11-4. Really kind of had a tough draw and ran through the tournament. Was playing well. '99, I had a great year, anyways. So it was kind of like rolling good. I've got a lot of seconds, unfortunately, but a few firsts. But definitely beat me in the finals more than any other player by far.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
But what I was getting at, there were like 10 players left, and I was doing an interview. It may have been Mike Pinoza, I can't remember. And he said, well, you can see it's Efren and Kim Davenport and Luat and John, just all great names. Is there anybody you don't want to see? And it wasn't really answering that question. I just kind of said, well, the same thing I'm saying to you. Well, Johnny's cost me the most money. So I guess if I had to pick somebody, not Johnny. And sure enough, that's who it was. So,
yeah. So that was your most crushing defeat. You go back to that Johnny Archer match at the U.S. Open. What would you say would be as a player, your most crowning achievement, your biggest victory?
uh, the one I remember the most probably is the first Mosconi Cup. Of course, the '03, I remember pretty well in the US Open, of course. So it's a toss up between those two. The BCA Pro Invitational was a big win for me just because the first year they had it, which also was '99, I got to the final and lost to George Sansucci in the final. And it was the first time I played a ESPN match. And so in '08, the last year they had it, I actually won the event, which I was very, very happy just because it was the last year they're going to have it. Got to the finals and never really had done too much else in it. So I remember that one pretty well. But probably, either the Mosconi or the US Open 9-ball. So US Open One Pocket ranks up there pretty good too, just because I lost my first match in that event. And I think I won 11 in a row or something, 10 or 11 in a row to win the tournament. So,
Yeah. So in terms of matches where you were gambling and matching up, was there anything that kind of uh, compared with the US Open? Did you ever have any huge scores that you were like, yeah, this was amazing? Or was the tournament just that much different when you won a tournament championship?
yeah, it's that much different just because when you're in action, especially back then, we started so much different. It wasn't, oh, let's bet 30,000 on this one set. It was a lot of by the game, and you raised it and you played long sessions, and that's how you beat a guy. So you really don't revel in the number or whatever, however you want to label it. You really don't get involved in the number so much until it is over. And then after 20 hours of playing, you're looking to eat something and go to sleep. And it's like, it's not as euphoric as a tournament win, tournament setting. And, as much as all these guys that gamble on the road, when we all started, we loved the road gambling, but I mean, we still watched read the magazines and watched the TV because that's where we wanted to be. I think at least 99 out of 100. So I would have to just still label with the tournaments for sure.
Yeah.
As the tournaments are just a little bit more.
So I know you do a lot of coaching and a lot of training, and I'm curious, when did you start doing that, and what attracted you to that side of the sport?
Just a little guess, probably seriously 6 years ago, maybe. There were a couple guys here locally in DFW that wanted some help and kind of led from there. They did pretty well and liked what was going on. And so the rest of their teams, they played leagues, and some of their teammates. And I think at one time I ended up teaching 2 entire teams, off and on, not as a group, but as individuals. But, and then kind of progressed from there. I've learned so much that I knew I would learn, but I just didn't realize it was so immense what you learn. And I think just because of the individual to individual basis is what really our game's fascinating anyways, and there's all kinds of opinions, but if you really pay attention from person to person, I think that's really the easiest way to learn what's going on.
Yeah, so I had Sky Woodward on the podcast, and I was talking to Sky. I was doing this segment for a while. I forgot to include it tonight, but I basically throw out a player's name, and I have the guest give me a one-word response to that player. And so I was talking to Sky, and I said Jeremy Jones. And do you have a guess of what he might have said? The one-word response?
One word, well, good cook is 2 words, but other than that, I don't know.
He said genius.
Oh, wow.
What do you think about that response?
Maybe a little over the top, but I'm going to have to text him after this is over and send him a laughing face first, but send him a thank you. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, if you ever hung out with my family, I think you would consider otherwise. I always label myself the dumbest in my family, but genius is just, that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, I mean, he was
I don't want
referring
to
to.
get sensitive on this show here, Joey. So
Well, hey, we've had people cry on this show before, Jeremy.
I believe it. It's early, but I'm feeling it.
Yeah, no, but in all honesty, he was talking about just the way you see the game is different from others. And picking up on your previous response, just I can tell that you're very observant. right? The people who are curious and observant, they make the best at understanding anything in life, right? And so would you say that's a quality that you've kind of honed over the years, is really paying attention and watching what people are doing and kind of rounding that into your repertoire in terms of coaching?
Yeah, and I think it goes back to being number 5 out of 6 very different active kids. My siblings, my older brother was my hero in many ways, even though he was 10 years older. He was a very good athlete. My dad was a very good athlete. My sisters were always pretty successful and very smart. So paying attention was kind of easy in that regard. And again, through sports, which I recognize now, having my kids, my stepchildren, that I was very lucky with the coaches I had as a whole. And that makes a huge difference. So.
Do you think, like United States players, do you think they could benefit from having personal coaches more like the European players do? A lot of the European players have their own coaches, right? That they can call. They played a bad set, they call them even if they're not even around and say, "Hey, here's what happened that set," and they kind of talk them through it. And I've heard countless stories of this. Do you think the U.S. players should look more towards kind of a coaching model?
Well, without a doubt. I mean, every sport, if you just toss aside the Euros and the Chinese Taipei, obviously well trained. If you just toss aside our sport and just look at what's going on in the rest of the world in sports, golf or in tennis, all those, at one time it was very limited in coaching. They did have coaching and whatnot, but it wasn't anything like it is today. So not only to keep up with what's going on in our sport, or really what is available. If we don't do it, it's kind of idiotic, really. Otherwise, but the one perspective that players need to have, and this is amateurs all the way up to the best in the world, if they're working with someone, is it's a long-term thing. It's you're putting your game in someone else's hands for a reason. So it's more of, it's not going to be instant, I guess is what I'm saying. It's, especially for the top players, you're talking about trying to improve them in percentage points overall. So even more so that they'll see results because of how great they are, but maybe something might not be so natural at first. So, but yeah, to answer your question, I think the Americans should definitely be trying to, whoever they believe in, give them a chance, and I think they'll see better results.
So I know you do coaching, as part of what you do to make money, for a living. So you can't give away all your secrets, but I'm curious, one of the things when I started doing the podcast, I wanted to get your stories, I wanted to highlight you as a player, but I also wanted to get advice for maybe those up and coming players out there. I met a kid from Texas actually in Las Vegas not too long ago. Michael French was his name, and he said, I've watched every one of your episodes. I take notes on them, and whatever these guys say, I write it down and I try it. And I'm like, man, you don't realize the wind you just put under my sails to keep doing this. And
Yeah.
so, yeah. And I want to know from Jeremy Jones, what is one piece of advice that you could give to up and coming players out there that would help their game?
Well, of course, quality practice, probably more than anything. I mean, we can't all get instruction, and we can't all, be next to the best players in the world, or even, take advantage of that when you can, of course. But we all know the difference in quality and not quality when it comes to practicing. You know it yourself when you're at home hitting balls or whatever it is. So it's easier to figure things out on your own when you're, trying hard. So.
Yeah. So you're the captain of the US Mosconi Cup team for the last couple years now. I'm curious how that opportunity began. Can you kind of take us through how you got involved in that and became a part of this?
Uh, well, it started in 18, January, I believe it was 18. It may have been December of 17. I think it was January 18. Johan Rosnick contacted me and said that, him being captain, that he wanted an assistant captain. And to say it was a very short list of who he would work with, maybe. He hit me up and he said that he felt like I was a good person to assist him on this side of the pond, get some things put together. I know a lot of the players, and so that's kind of how it got started. And then it just, from there, it went on to being the captain.
So I think I look back through your history. I think you might have played in like 7 or maybe more Mosconi
7.
Cups. Is that 7? So what role have you found to be more challenging, playing in a Mosconi Cup or being the captain?
Yeah, it's not even close being the captain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So take
Yeah.
us through some of the challenges. Like what's going through your mind like about now? December's coming. It's a big month. There's a lot on the line. So tell us about some of the challenges of being captain and kind of what you're dealing with on the day to day.
Well, it's a battle with myself a lot in a regard that, you're here to be captain to win. But you have to almost make your own standards about it. Meaning it, I want to go with players that are playing and competing. I know it's not always easy to be playing and competing right now. And it's easy to say, no, I'm not going to travel to those events because of obvious reasons. So, making that battle, of course, number one, we're here to win and I'm here to win. That's maybe I don't shout that out enough, but yeah. So, trying to toss between a bunch of players to where number one, winning, but also, it's not everyone gets a trophy kind of mentality. I don't want to go there, but I do want players that are competing. So, so it's very hard when you look at a player that maybe isn't competing as much, but maybe you feel like that's the guy or that guy's going to perform better, but there's still a little question mark there. But you see all these other people that are trending and getting better and out there playing the best players in the world. So that's the first and foremost, because like I said, winning is on the mind. So.
Yeah, and I think this year a lot of people in the United States were kind of looking for somebody to break through. Some younger player, like we talked about. We actually had you on the broadcast when Chris, at the time Robinson, now Reinhold, played Danny Olson, and Danny played a wonderful 3 days of 10 ball. And since then, though, has struggled. Hasn't really broke through the way we were hoping. You actually brought up Jeremy Sose on that conversation that we had as maybe a player that you might be looking for. This year there hasn't really been anybody to kind of break through other than the normal people that we've been seeing for Team USA. I mean, am I seeing that right? Or, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. And it's, I think we're right there though. I mean, I think the next wave of young players, it's just a matter of, even more so, I think the next wave of young players have a lot more talent than we've seen in the last few years as far as numbers. Maybe not more talent, but, more of them and more of a chance. It's just a matter of, us pushing them going to where they're playing those events to get the experience. One of them's going to break through. It's inevitable. But, if the numbers lessen, then, well, the chances are slimmer. But also these last few months, these have been pretty killer field tournaments, right? I mean, it's not easy to break through. We looked at a player, Aloysius Yap. Of course, he's from Singapore. He's not in the USA conversation, but you could say he broke through, and he's been quite the player for a few years. So it's not easy to break through so easily for a lot of players, but I think it is coming. That's for sure.
So how do you feel about the US's chances this year going into the Mosconi Cup?
Well, I love our chances. I mean, I'll be honest, the team's not, even close to assembled. There's still a lot of decisions to be made. There's still a few events to look at. Shane and I have to discuss a lot of things, but, as a coach, you have to look at it a little differently, I think. And we have to look at, first off, how's the match going to go? Most likely, to win or run away, but most likely we're going to have a close one if we win, right? That's what I feel anyways. Well, I say I feel that. I have to prepare for that. So, I like looking at guys that are not beaten down, that are really trying to make those big wins. Of course, they have to have some credit to their names, and that doesn't mean world titles, but, like I said earlier, maybe trending in the right direction. We saw that last year with Chris, I thought. He didn't have those big wins, of course, but if you look at his matches, both wins and losses, the score line will tell you he was heading in the right direction. And so that's something that made my gut a little easier. And then, of course, working with him and, his demeanor, that, the whole package made me feel like we could get some points out of him. And that's where we got to look from player to player.
Yeah, and you did get points out of him. I thought he played very well. And I'm a huge fan of Chris just because, he does things the right way. He loses a big match and he posts on Facebook about, I'm going to work on X, Y, and Z, and it's like what you want to see. You had to be very proud of him. Tell us about that.
Yeah, that was great. He actually got better as it went, and maybe not throughout every match in the Mosconi, but just everything leading up to it, which is very easy to stumble, believe it or not, even knowing that, hey, I'm playing in the Mosconi in a month, or 2 months. Even practicing can be difficult because it was, by far the biggest moment in his career, at least his professional career. So I was very happy. I was very happy with the way the guys accepted him, but also expected some things from him, and he was willing to take on the challenge. I think he gets a few more points last year if it wasn't for this or that. But he was a true teammate, which is good. And in these kind of situations, we're getting to where the Mosconi has got so much information in past years that we can really look at players playing a role. And that goes from the top guys, which is obviously Shane and Skyler, playing a role, all the way down to other guys playing a role. And whether that be in the practice room, sometimes, of course, you got to be yourself, but then you also got to realize what's going on. We're all here to win. And so looking at guys like in that manner, I think makes a difference as well. But Chris, he did great. Not to get off the question, I was super proud of him. Messaged him today. He's on the way to Austria to compete in that event and then be there with the juniors. So, Chris, as far as pool, he's a huge asset to the game.
Yeah, and he seems to be in pretty good form right now, at least from what I've been seeing. I mean, he hasn't won any big events, but he seems to be knocking on the door.
Yeah, he was over at the house the other day for a few hours, wanted to work on some things. And that's the one thing, Chris, he realizes he needs to work on some things. And he trusts me. Of course, I'm always here for all the players, but I think you're going to see some things from Chris coming soon. He was saying that, yeah, he had a little slump in the year at one point, but he feels like even some matches that he's won and lost, he's headed in the right direction. So looking for him, maybe, do something in Austria. We'll see.
Yeah. So, Jeremy, I recently became a partner in the company onepkt.com. The first time I ever,
Congratulations, by the way.
thank you, I appreciate that. The first time I ever played the game of One Pocket, I remember just like my mind was blown, like what have I been missing all these years? And I just love the game. I love the intellectual side of the game. I love that, you're constantly thinking offense, defense, and it sounds like I did a post about this the other day. It's such a simple game. Don't let your opponent shoot to his hole and shoot to your hole. How hard could it be? But it takes it's kind of like poker, right? You can learn it quick, but to really learn it, like to master it, you have to play it for a very long time. And so I want to talk to you about being inducted into the One Pocket Hall of Fame. What an honor that must be. Tell us about what that means to you.
Well, I mean, it's definitely one of my, once it became a thing, I went to, I believe it was the first one there at the Q and Cushion in Houston. It may have been the second one. It was when Jersey Red was inducted. It was unfortunately after he had passed away, but Dottie and his wife and many of his fans were there. It was awesome. And of course, at that time, there wasn't a ton of one pocket tournaments. So you don't know how things are going to go. It's kind of like not too much of a thought as far as getting in there or, labeling yourself with Jersey Red, but, or Grady Matthews, Billy and Cardone, any other great names. But it was a true honor and really kind of a hats off to the Red Raider, really spending the time with me. And then again, like I said, at the induction, being in Houston, there are great one pocket cities, and there are quite a few of them actually, but I don't know if there's any that are as good as Houston, Texas. So that alone was kind of like a hats off to them as well.
Yeah, and I've heard that about Houston. I visit there every once in a while, and you see one pocket being played all the time there. Uh, are you encouraged by what you're seeing with a lot of the events? I think I've noticed it over the last few years that it seems like any big tournament now, 9 ball, 10 ball, whatever it is, has a one pocket division. Texas Open has a one pocket division. There's a big tournament in Aiken, South Carolina right now with a one pocket division. Do you feel like we're seeing more tournament one pocket now than we have in a long time?
Oh, without a doubt, and it's probably going to sustain. I would think. Excuse me. One pocket fans and players are very faithful and very devoted to their game, and for good reason, because the game's so great. And I always said that there for a little while, a lot of promoters or people that were thinking about 9 ball thought the fans just wanted to see break and run after break and run, where you don't get much fans decision making if it's just break and run and break and run. So in one pocket, fans get to sit there and debate between themselves. Oh, they should have done this, or maybe this outcome. And not only that, like you said, all the creativity you see and all the different brains and different talent and what they excel at, which is very fascinating that you can win different ways, which you can't do that playing other games in pool, most of them anyways. But yeah, I mean, you're going to see tons of tournaments. I think at some time it may even make the mainstream. I'm not sure exactly how or where, but like I said, I think most fans, when they watch football, they want to talk about the decisions. Like I was an athlete, right? So I appreciate watching them throw it and catch it. It's so awesome. I understand how difficult that is and everything else, but 80 or 90% of fans want to sit back and say, oh no, he should have thrown it. Oh, why did he do this? He should have done that. So one pocket leads to that a little bit more, which I like what they're doing with rotation now, tightening the pockets, making the break a little tougher. That leads towards more of the game, which I think fans will appreciate in the end also.
Yeah, and I think one pocket is that game that it's all about matchups, right? Sometimes you have two people that just match up really well together, and or one person matches up well against another person and then not so well against another. I recall the match between, I think it was the last match that Chip and Roberto played. And Roberto started off day one really well. And I'm like, oh, he's gonna take this. And then just Chip put the lock on him, he just like tightened up. And it was like Roberto couldn't win a game after that, it seemed like. And so there's just this whole dynamic between the offense, the defense, and the mental side of it. It's like I think we've all played the game where you're getting a ball and you can't win. And then you get one more ball. Instead of 9-8, you get 9-7, and now they can't win. And
Right.
it's like, how does one ball make that big a difference? Well, it does up here,
Well, and I think the information is solid. And what I mean, like you just said, as far as Chip and Roberto. Now, I don't know if Chip went back and looked at day one or just thought about how he won games versus how he lost games. And that's one thing you can do in a match, especially if you're playing multiple days, is you can go back and say, hey, when I did this, I won 9 out of 10 or 8 out of 10. And, I remember that match. It was a little unfortunate for Roberto that he was a little, let's say, young in his one pocket career, because he couldn't really prevent the balls from going up table. He didn't quite know what to do all the time to keep Chip from getting him up table. And then you saw what happened when Chip got him up in the corner. It was almost easy pickings, right?
Yeah. When I became a huge fan of yours, so I always knew you as a player, respected you as a player, but when I got into one pocket, I started watching some one pocket videos, some YouTube, and and noticed you as a commentator. And right away, I was like searching for matches that you commentated because your knowledge of the game and the way you could explain shots. What drew you to commentating? What was the thing that said, "Hey, I'd like to try this"?
Well, I did it actually. First one, maybe. I think 99 or 2000, I got to do some world championships, 9-ball with Sid Waddell, who was great. I don't know if you ever got to watch him. He's passed away now, but he was a great commentator in England, did many snooker and different things. But he gave me a lot of credit. He said, "Hey, I think you should look into this at some time when you're, not playing." And so I did some here and there with Mosconi, and I did some more world 9-balls whenever I got knocked out of the tournament and whatnot. And didn't really do much for a couple of years because I wasn't playing a whole lot from, I think, 10 to like 12 or something like that. Maybe 09 to like 2012. I didn't play a lot of tournaments. So, and then Ray Hansen at Pool Action TV, I'd gotten around him a few times and he was like, "I'd love to have you in here." And it just kind of, as he grew, I started doing more. And then, of course, I'd always do some for Pat Fleming at his events there. And we did some Make It Happen events together. And, of course, Matchroom put me in the box there doing some. So it's kind of went from not really trying it to make it a too often thing to something I do quite a bit. But I'm pretty comfortable doing it. I think there's a lot of great commentators out there. But yeah, I enjoy it. It keeps me in stroke a little bit anyways, and it definitely keeps me inspired. Let's say that, Joey. So.
Yeah, so I started dabbling in that a couple years ago, and it was just it's actually right when the pandemic started. We had a lockdown, and we had a guy here in town, in Phoenix, he had a 7-foot diamond tightened up, super tight, and like 4-inch pockets. And all the top players would go over there and play on a Friday night, but it would just be the players in there because of the pandemic, right? And Scott Frost went over there and he labeled it. The guy's name's Junior Flores, his house, and Scott labeled it Junior's Trap House because the table is so gaffy, right? But I would come over and I would commentate sitting on the patio looking through the window.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was really neat. And, the first couple times I did it, people were like, "Hey, you're doing a good job. I really like listening to you." And, I was like, well, if I'm going to do this, let me do it right. And I started kind of like modeling, what you do and that kind of thing. I'm wondering, there's a lot of people with all the live streams that are available now, all the people streaming matches and doing commentary. What kind of advice would you have for maybe an aspiring commentator?
Try and keep it real, of course. Kind of realize the players are the show. I mean, it's you focus on them. Usually just pinging off your partner in the booth. Sometimes I do it solo. When I do it solo, I probably get into the game a little bit more shot for shot. And just trying to enjoy yourself. The only way people are going to continue to want or enjoy you is if you are you, because you can't continue a farce for a long time. We all know that. So, just be yourself and realize you're going to improve as you go. It's not going to be just perfect at first. And just like anything else, the guys at the table, go with your gut. We all make mistakes, so you'll get better. Almost everyone gets better as they go. So.
Well, I've never missed a shot from the booth. I'll tell you that.
I don't know. I've been dogging it before so bad. I wanted to leave the booth to make sure
Oh, man.
I didn't miss one. But yeah, it's a lot of fun. The commentary, like I said, you've done it. It can be hard sometimes when sometimes, okay, I'm lucky I get to do mainly great players. Or at least very good players, or even guys that are a little bit down. But the toughest part is when they're struggling. Of course, it almost makes you struggle a little bit. But that's going to be pretty rare. And like I said, just know you're going to improve and be yourself.
It must have been really tough commentating my match against Kristina Tkach out here in Tucson, huh? I was dogging it hard.
No, I actually watched you practice. For a little while off and on, because you were on the table a lot. during that week,
Yeah.
or when you could be. And that first night, when I saw you there, and then I was pretty impressed overall. I told my guys that I didn't realize
Shucks.
I didn't realize you're a pool player. I knew you played, of course, but I mean, but
Yeah.
I knew it wasn't your best game overall, but you made a lot of good outs anyways. And that's the one thing, is a lot of pressure for you in that event. Plus it's a race to 4, which adds pressure. So just
Shot
like the
clock, Jeremy.
oh
Shot
yeah, the
clock.
shot clock. Yeah, the
I had
shot clock's
never
different.
played. Look, I told everybody this. I had never played under a shot clock. And, I think I'm a pretty fast player. And 30 seconds sounds like a lot with a 20-second extension, but it's
Mm-hmm.
really not a lot. As soon as you get up out of your seat and the clock's ticking, you assess what you have going on. If you take one lap around the table or you look at something twice
Mm-hmm.
and then you get back down, well, you're pretty much going to hear the beep, or you're going to be pretty close to that. And
Right.
if you have to get a bridge, like one time, I don't know if you remember this, but I completely dogged it, right? Because it's a shot where I have to put my extension on. So I go over and I get my extension and I put it on. And then I realize it's still not enough. So I had to grab the bridge. So I do that. And so I have to use my extension. So I'm like, okay, I've used my extension. And then I reach out, I shoot it with the bridge. And then as soon as that's over, I go to put the bridge under the table. And I'm the kind of guy, if it's hanging out a little bit, it's got to be perfect, right? So
Yeah.
I'm kicking the bridge under, and then I'm taking my extension off and I try to lay it on the table and it's rolling off. And I look up and I got 10 seconds left. I got to race to the table. I mean, people don't realize that. I think if you've never played with a shot clock, that was something that was super hard for me to fade.
Yeah, it's not easy. I was talking to a guy about it the other night. I think the shortest that I ever played with was 35, actually, in the Mosconi Cup, when they implemented the last 2 times I played, or maybe 3. But 30 short. The big deal about the shot clock is, of course, practicing it a little bit. But when you have that minute after the break, understanding how vital that is to assess later on in the rack. Like if you recognize you're going to have a problem, right? Balls are tied up, right? You have to take some of that first minute to kind of give you a little feeling on how you're going to address a major problem. And also use that clock a little bit to settle yourself and use that first minute. That's where I think a lot of people make a mistake, is the first shot's kind of easy. So they get down and they don't use much of that minute, and to look at the rest of the table and maybe the rest of the out, or maybe something that might happen later in the game. But it's not easy, that's for sure. I was actually not a fast player, or not known to be a fast player, because I had to use a lot of powder and whatnot. My hands really, out of norms, had a lot of sweat. So, but I, for some reason, was very comfortable with the clock once I started to play with it. It didn't seem to bother me. And of course, I preach to people, you have to learn to go with your gut instinct as far as your position play. Unless you're, the little devil on your right shoulder is telling you, no, no, no. You really have to be able to see that it's more about execution than it is decision when you're on a 30-second shot clock. You look at a ball and you say, oh, I'm supposed to go 2 rails here. Well, you're going to mess up your execution if you start questioning that and get down on the shot clock. You're better off to say, okay, that 2 rails is correct, and now I have 20 seconds or 18 seconds to get down and execute the way I want to. Because normally you'll overcome that little bit of a bad decision as long as your execution is good, if that makes any sense, Joey. So.
Yeah, it does. There's some great advice there, I think, that you've provided for managing the shot clock, that I hope, for folks with Predator and CSI doing these events for not a whole lot of money, you can get in and compete against pros if you're a good amateur, or, top amateur. And a lot of them haven't played with a shot clock. Like, I had never played with a shot clock. And so that using that first minute, I think that's beautiful, because I didn't do that. I didn't even think about that. And once it's gone, once you shoot that first shot, you don't get that time back. So why
No,
not take that
no.
time?
Yeah, and if you shoot the first shot and you get a little out of line, it's like now 30 seconds looks like super quick. You just had a minute, but you shot quickly. 30 looks like it's going to go real fast, so you don't get any feel, you don't get any comfort. And even if it's just for comfort, try and use that minute a little bit,
Yeah. So we have the Predator CSI events. I think they did they had 5 on the schedule, but they're doing 4 this year. I think they postponed Puerto Rico. I think they're adding events next year. They're adding more money. You have Matchroom now, which is adding another event, which they added an event this year with the CLP. Um, pool's in an interesting spot. People talk about it and they're kind of down on it all the time, and they're always naysayers. But I think it's growing and some cool things are happening. But what ideas might you have for kind of even taking it to the next level?
Well, I wouldn't say I ran 2 tournaments, me and a friend of mine down in Houston in 2000 or 2001 it was. And they were very good. They worked out nice. And so, but as far as, just those 2 tournaments, I wouldn't say I've ever been on the backside of things. So the real only, I think, accurate input I could try and give is that I'd love to see the players, as a group, add things to the event. I think not only financially, but in dollar sense, I think as a group we could raise dollars to add to great events. Not only the big ones, but make other ones bigger. I think we could promote, which would only help promote ourselves and the events in certain ways, and that eerily sounds like a players association. But I think, that's been a rough term in our sport, or because of some past things. But I think our sport is getting to the point that a lot of these big groups, if it was set up correctly, they would love to just, do business with the association instead of 128 individuals. Does that make sense?
Yeah, what do we need to do to make that happen? Because I've heard a lot of people say that, and then I heard some names tossed around, and every time a name gets tossed around as somebody who might be able to lead that, people are shooting holes in it and saying, "No, that guy won't work. He's a
Well,
jerk," or whatever. How do we do that? How do we get to that?
I mean, I can't speak for you, but most people I know can get a few holes shot in them. I know I could. None of us are perfect. But it's just, of course, like I said, I think Matchroom, I think CSI, I think whoever's involved promoting events, like I said, if it was done correctly, they would love to contact one person, knowing that or one, group, a small group, knowing that that's going to cover a lot of bases. And not only that, like I said, as far as, the biggest brand would be the players as a group, in my opinion, versus them by themselves. So I think, a lot of times the players want to see bigger added money, but also if we went out and put some, legwork, footwork in, we could add money to events. And also, when they want to ask for more money, we'll say it's a lot easier to ask for more money if you're going to, add some money yourself. Right. So, and also promote with the juniors and raise money for the juniors and just, get more of an organization of, from the top on down, maybe. But to get it done, it would take some devotion. And like I said before, like a long-term thing, just like a coach, it's going to take something that's the players are going to have to understand. It's going to start out smaller if it's going to work correctly and build. The issue is the chicken and the egg. The players want the money wants the players, right? Which one's going to come first? And I think if they both started out on a smaller region or a smaller size, it would work. And, of course, we can't have no ulterior motives.
Right.
That's the thing that people have said in the past, and I'm not saying whether it's right or wrong or true or false or whatever, but that just can't be part of it. It's got to be as a whole thing. And the main thing that, like I said at the beginning of this, is that those promoters and those companies and those huge, facets of people that do things, I think in the end, if it was done correctly, would love to just have to say, hey, Players Association, we want 100 out of your top 128 to make this event. Is that okay? And now I'm just pulling something out of a hat, but how much easier would that say, okay, we got that. Now you go do your business and we'll do our business and we'll have that 100 there. And that's just one thing that would make an event better, right? I mean, how can
Yeah.
a CSI or Matchroom or whomever's running an event, AccuStats, Pat Fleming, how great would it be to him be able to advertise, yeah, these 128 in the world right here, well, 100 of them going to be here. And
Yep.
that's a huge thing for them as far as making their event successful.
So Jeremy, I see you have your Cuetec shirt there, and
No,
when we
my
were
Fort Worth Billiards hat. It's a little
yeah,
hard.
so when we were in Tucson, you saw me playing with my Avid that I have, just kind of
Hmm.
testing it out, and was saying what a great hitting cue that is. And so I want to give you a chance to talk about your sponsors.
Yeah, well, Cuetec, they've been a blessing, and Kyle and Brett and Ian and everyone over there is, really. I try not to ask for too much, of course, but those guys have been a blessing. And Kyle, he's worked on and off during pandemic, had a few health issues, but he's always on it. And just like I was telling a guy earlier that, I didn't know the Cuetec team years and years ago at all, and I'm sure it's not the same knowing these guys' age and history and whatnot. But when they go to designing something, it's just not like on the fly. There's a lot of research done, and there's a lot of things that go into their product, and not just knowing these type of guys, but playing with the product. And to be honest with you, Joey, I got an Avid Bud on my Synergy right now. I just got
Oh,
this, so I love it. I'll be switching to it, and can't wait till the shafts come in next week, to be honest with you. Yeah, and Fort Worth Billiards, Albert Trujillo, and everyone over there who does so much. Albert, he helps so many people that he's maybe not a nationwide known name, even though a lot of people from around the nation do business with Fort Worth Billiards. I do know that. But he does so much in the DFW area that the man just doesn't have time to go nationwide. But he's the type that could easily do that. And he's just a great guy. And again, just anything we've talked about, he's just, yeah, let me know what I can do. And along with the juniors, sponsoring a lot of juniors locally and sending them out to play. And, both those companies, Cuetec and Fort Worth Billiards, they've just been a blessing.
yeah, and I think I just saw that Fort Worth Billiards is sponsoring Chris Reinhold now.
Yeah,
I
that's
think I
right.
just noticed it. Yeah, so that's great. Well,
Yeah, and that's
Jeremy, yeah.
easy combo to figure, right? So.
Yeah. So, Jeremy, you've been great with your time. I know we kind of dodged each other for a couple weeks. Like I was busy,
Yeah.
you were busy, but I really appreciate you making the time to speak with me. And I think the viewers are really going to appreciate all of this insight and getting to know more about you. The man behind the mic, the man behind Team USA, the man behind a US Open championship and the One Pocket Hall of Fame. So I want to give you a chance. Are there any final thoughts that you have for the folks that might be out there watching this?
Yeah, keep at it. There's one person that my wife, Amy, I'd like to thank her that she puts me in a better position all the time. I'm not easy to deal with all the time, just like any of us pool players. So she makes me better and better with everything that goes on. And I certainly appreciate her and love her to death. And of course, the fans, y'all make it all worth it. I don't know how many times when I'm traveling, people come up to me, and maybe it's an easy way to approach somebody you look at as a peer or whatnot, but they come up to me and tell me how much they appreciate what's going on with pool and what I'm doing with it and what I'm involved with. And also, I'd like to thank the players. Players get a lot of knocks at times, but being out there and traveling and being away from your families and whatnot is not so easy. So it's easy for them to get a little, tired, let's say, and but they keep at it and they keep making the sport great. So hats off to the fans and players, and of course my wife, Amy Jones.
Awesome. Well, Jeremy, there's one thing I forgot. Are
Oh,
you open for new customers for your coaching services, your training services?
yeah. I
How do
travel
people
some.
get Yeah, how
Yeah,
do people
I
get a hold of you?
rarely ever say no. So I try to accommodate. I have, of course, to figure out times and whatnot. Yeah, but yeah, definitely. And And I wanted to thank you as well, Joey, for having me on. And I was going to
My
ask,
pleasure.
you going to be in Ohio?
I'm trying to make it work. I'm not
Okay,
sure.
good.
I'm
Good.
like 72% right now.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Refrigerator Perry was number 72, I think. So I
Yeah,
always
that's
try
true.
to relate it to
That's true.
when people say a number, a
So
jersey number.
Jeremy, if somebody wanted to sign up for your services, how do they reach you?
Just mainly Facebook, Messenger. If you get my number from someone, that's fine. No big deal. Don't really want to give it out just right here on the
No,
forum.
absolutely.
But yeah, if someone
We got to get you a website, man. Get you a website and an email.
well, I actually have I started that a couple years ago, but then I'm kind of changing directions with it a little bit. So hopefully something here in the future to where I could maybe accommodate more people around without maybe being right in person. So
Sure. Well, yeah,
just
I
kind of
mean,
want something unique. That's all.
okay. Yeah, and people, if you need to get a hold of Jeremy and you're friends with me on Facebook, shoot me a message. I'll hook it up. I'll make sure you get in touch with him so you can get some of the best training that's available out there. Jeremy,
Yeah.
thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, Joey, no worries.
Awesome. You have it. That was Jeremy Jones, Team USA Mosconi Cup captain, former US Open champion, and former US Open one pocket champion and one pocket Hall of Famer. I really enjoyed that conversation. And about 2 seconds after we disconnected, Jeremy sent me a message and he said, "Hey, make sure to give a shout out to James Davis Jr. We're asking for prayers. He was hospitalized and really in bad shape, but it looks like he's starting to improve. So if you would, just give a little prayer to James Davis Jr., good pool player in Texas, kind of been in the Texas pool community for a long, long time. So if you guys would, thank you. Take care.